Let's give this a try. Hello, fellow Sublime Text Fanatics. OdatNurd here, back after a somewhat long hiatus from the live streaming. I did not actually schedule this one tonight because up until the last second, I wasn't entirely sure if I was going to be ready to go, but I think that I probably am. We'll find out. For those not in the know, during December, I was doing one live stream a day. Videos are in archives in the channel. Building a remote build system in Sublime Text, or at least the prototype for one. And as of the last day of December, I did get a working prototype working. There's also, again, if you look in the channel archives or in the Devember playlist for the final devlog, you'll see a demo of that thing running. But mid-December, around December 21, 22, something like that, 20th, I got a very nasty head chest cold. It hit me like a ton of bricks out of the blue, and I was more or less semi-comatose for a good 3-day period or so, 2 or 3 days, doing a lot of sleeping and not moving around much at all. After that, I started feeling much better, but I lost my voice. In fact, if you look, there is one Devember devlog I did where my voice was so quiet, I actually had to boost the audio level by 250% just to make myself heard in the video. And that sort of put paid to doing devlogs or recurring live streams for the rest of November because my voice just was not there. And even for the last couple of weeks, I've been having a very, in fact, I still sort of hear it in my voice a little bit right now. Uh, Sort of a scratchy. I don't know if there's a little bit of congestion in there. Sometimes I'm prone to a little bit of a fit of coughing. More otherwise feel good. So I decided now is the time to start live streaming again, and we'll see what happens. I'm going to try and hit the mute button if I feel a cough coming on so that I don't blow anybody's ears out, and we'll see what happens. Since I wasn't really entirely sure if I was going to do anything tonight, I didn't actually set stuff up. And as a matter of fact, as we can see here, I did not even perform all of the appropriate steps to hide from the taskbar various windows that probably don't need to be visible up there. Just because they get in the way of what we're doing, not because I don't want anybody to know I'm using OBS or whatever. It's been a while since I live streamed, apparently. But in any case, we're gonna try and go maybe a couple hours, maybe a little less this time. I said I don't really have. Normally on a live stream day, I would spend some time, especially on a weekend day when I have a lot of time to think about stuff while I'm doing my extra long morning walk on the weekends to come up with exactly what it is I want to try to do. Um, but this time I didn't do that because I wasn't entirely sure if I was actually going to try this. But better late than never, I say. So I do have some stuff that I'd like to work on. And as you can see, we seem to be doing perhaps some override audit work. Let's see if this button still does what I think it does. Right on, right on. I'm going to go over here and click a little eyeball icon and try to keep my finger away from that button because I seem to recall the last live stream I did before November, everything went wildly off the rails. Caught that cough. Okay, so, oh, I totally forgot a window. Oh, man. We don't need that window either. Mostly just need this window, and I will open the console in a window and size it up and bring it over here onto this desktop, which you can see up there. Even though these windows are hidden from the taskbar, they're not hidden from the pager. Like I said, I'm not trying to hide that I'm using tools. I just don't want the taskbar all cluttered. What's a good size for this thing? Let's go like so. Got to be careful not to cover any windows on the right-hand side, because with them not being in the taskbar, they're sort of hard to focus. I can't click in the pager. I can just sort of move them around to another desktop or something. Fun fact, one time I totally lost a Chrome window on my right-hand desktop because it was maximized, and I used that command to hide the window, and then I made another window that was full screen. The Discord chat window was full screen, and then after that I thought I had closed Chrome and lost all my tabs, but it turned out that it was still there. It was just completely hidden from everything and hidden in that thing. Anyway, that's enough of that babble. For those that are unfamiliar, my first package for Sublime Text was Override Audit. And as a matter of fact, I can bring this tab over here. What did I learn in the what did I learn in that last live stream? Don't try to use a browser source as an off-screen thing, because for one thing, I'm very terrible about remembering to switch which source is visible between the browser and the Sublime window, which is terrible in the extreme. And also, if the browser window overlaps the OBS window on the other desktop where the little video preview is, the video gets all corrupted. But as I was saying, if we go to this, we can see what is the first package that I created for Sublime Text. And it's actually been about a couple of years now, and I haven't really done a lot to it in that couple of years because there weren't a lot of, more really many bugs or feature type things being reported, and it was just stable and just worked. For example, somewhere on this page, well, there's documentation. I thought it was available. Oh, I can't even remember how my own page worked, right? I guess it's probably this right here. So we can see Will has recovered from the packagecontrol.io server outage and repaired things. And we can see this package was first seen 2 years ago. And yeah, just it's a stable package. There's not a lot of problems with it per se. It does what it needs to do. So wasn't doing regular releases because there really wasn't a lot of need for a regular release. And I realize some people see, oh, it's last modified 2 years ago. This thing's abandoned. Sometimes code sits unmodified for a couple of years because it's abandoned, and sometimes it sits for a couple of years because it's stable and it doesn't have any outstanding bugs, and there aren't a lot of features that need to be added. Although, in fact, there are some features that I would like to add, and that's going to be the focus of the next few live streams, trying to get that ready. And for the record, there's also full documentation available on my website at odatnerd.net/overrideaudit/docs. There's your quick start, terminology, and actually, should also point out that I really wanted the plan in December, or before December even, was after November to use the first couple of weeks of January to get rolling on a bunch of video production so that I could have some in the queue as I went forward. But my voice was just so racked, and it was so hard to go for more than a couple of minutes of talking without feeling a tickle in the back of my throat or coughing. In fact, I can feel myself wanting to cough right now from talking so much, but maybe sort of hold it back, that I didn't really get a chance to do that. One thing I do want to do is create a new video for introducing package control introducing override audit, and also make a sort of not necessarily a full video version of this documentation, but covering all of the aspects of it per se, to better explain to people. Right now, there's a 15-minute video, which is maybe a bit long for what people want to see. Um, uh-oh. I could not hold that cough back. But in any case, just for the, whoops, that's not the command I want. Oh, I actually had a, there we go. Override audit provides for various different types of commands. You can get a list of all packages. You can get a list of all of your overrides. You can diff your overrides. Now, if you don't know what an override is, chances are good you're probably going to learn something about that in the videos upcoming. There's also a README. But generally speaking, just as a 10,000 foot overview, if I view package report, I have currently 101 packages installed right now, and the header of the report is telling me that 51 of those packages are shipped with Sublime, 17 of them are installed by the user Sublime package files, i.e. me, 45 of them are unpacked in the packages directory, 2 of them are in the list of ignored packages, and 13 of them are dependencies. And one of the things I want to do for the next release is sort of add more help to these report pages because they're not as descriptive as they could be. But generally speaking, a shipped package is designated with an S, which always is in this first column. A shipped package means it's something that, as the name suggests, ships with Sublime. That package is just available by default. And as you can see, as you scroll through this list, this generally relates to language packages, except for default, which is where the default menu bindings, key bindings, and all of that stuff lists. 17 of these packages are installed as Sublime package files by the user. Which, as we can see here, is the package control loader, automatic package reloader, something I use, channel repository tools for working with package control, some other packages, file manager, etc., etc. Sort of what you would expect. Most of the time when you install a package, it gets installed as a Sublime package file. And 45 of these packages are unpacked in the packages directory designated by a U, and that's just the directory that you see when you go to preferences, browse packages, and here's all of those directories here. And you'll note that these numbers don't line up per se with 101 up there because it's possible for a package to appear in more than one column at the same time. That's the that designates that there are potentially overrides. This report in particular just knows that there is a folder named default in the packages folder, so there might be overrides. We don't know for sure looking at this report. It's just to tell you the information on all of those packages. If something appears in more than one column, that means that it is possible that there is an override in that column, and an override just means that excuse me, there's a file in a package uh, of one type, like a shipped package or an installed package. You want to modify the contents of one of those files to be able to make it do something something else, add features, change syntax, highlighting, modify a theme, as we'll see in a second. Say maybe modify a plugin. One way to do that would be to unpack the Sublime package file, modify the content, repack it up. Not a good idea because if a package is a shipped package, when Sublime gets reinstalled or updates itself, it can and may replace a package file. In fact, I'm not. I remember I looked into it, but I can't remember per se if all packages are always updated or only ones that are changed in an update. I can't quite remember. But in any case, if it updates the package, it updates the Sublime package file, your change goes away. Similarly, I packages, these are packages that are still installed as Sublime package files, but they are installed, they're user installed, if you will, and by that we generally mean that you used package control, although it is possible for you to use, you can install these files yourself. You see, this command takes me to the packages folder. If you go up one folder and go into installed packages, anything in this folder that is a Sublime package file, this one does not need to be here and can go away, is Let's get rid of that one too. That was part of a package control upgrade. If it's a Sublime package file here, it's treated as a regular package. Now, normally package control is what puts these folders, these packages here, but you can do so yourself if you want to. If you wanted to manually install said package. And again, when package control updates a package, it does it by downloading a new release, creating a new package file out of it, and then throwing away the old package and installing the new one right on top of the old one. So again, if you modify the package, your change will be lost. So what do we do in that case? We create an override. Now, if I was to bulk diff package default, I'll just fold all of this. Whoops, that's too many. I have, as we can see in this report, two overrides, if you will. This one, paste from history, if we look at this diff, and I'll even zoom that out. Oh, apologies for all of the inadvertent pauses, but I really don't want to cough into the microphone if I can help it. This is an override on the paste from history plugin in the default package. So the minus 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 lines are the content of the shipped package default paste from history, and the plus lines are from my package's default paste from history. And what am I doing here? Essentially, this line makes the paste from history command use a quick panel pop-up instead of a menu. And this takes the first three lines of the text and appends them in if there are that many. Otherwise, it just appends some. It uses the first three lines of the text instead of just the first line to give extra context, and then make sure there are three of them, and then it gets ready to go. And what we can see is if I copy that, copy this one line, copy these 5 lines like so. If I use the command, I can see I get, instead of the pop-up menu, I get a quick panel, and I can see more context for the thing that I'm interested in. So that's one thing that I like to do in my copy of Sublime. And another is, and I think I did this for Devember, something that implicitly kills a build. If you try to build again when a build is already running, it kills it first, because I was having some problems with that. Now this is an override on a file in default in exec. So I want this change. I definitely want all the time. This one, maybe I do, maybe I don't. But I don't want to just modify the default package that ships with Sublime. That's going to be a terrible thing when Sublime updates itself and it decides to replace the default package. Boom, my thing goes away, and I had to remember what it was that I did. So how do you create an override? That's easy. Package you want to create an override for, you go to your packages folder, you create an appropriate folder named the same as the Sublime package, and inside it you put a copy of the file from the package, modify it as you see fit. You can also add extra files here if you want. And when Sublime is loading packages, as it's loading the default.sublime package and it finds that it wants to load the exec.py, it looks in this packages folder, says, oh, there's a file named default, folder named default, that's the package I'm loading. Oh, there's an exec.py in here, that's the file I'm loading. I'm going to use this one instead. Now this means I can replace the contents of a file in a non-destructive way. No matter how much the default package updates, it's not going to touch this because this is in my packages folder. My change remains. Now, one potential issue with that operation is that Sublime doesn't warn you when the file you're overriding is newer than the override itself. So in this case, if I was to update Sublime and it actually modified exec.py to add a new feature or fix a bug or something along that lines, the exec.py that ships with Sublime would be newer than my current my override. So it has content that what isn't in mine, unless I'm testing a fix that I know is going to be released or something. And so what's going to happen is, even though that file is different, Sublime's going to ignore it. It's still going to use mine. I'm going to miss a bug fix if they added any. I'm going to miss a new feature if they put some in because my code doesn't have them. So one thing Override Audit will do is warn you when your overrides are quote unquote expired, which is just its way of telling you that, hey, you might want to check this. So in this case, I would get a report very similar to something like this, and it would tell me, hey, this exec.py override, it's expired. You might want to check. And then I could look at this diff and see what changed, and maybe I want to incorporate changes into my file, or maybe I don't. And one thing I can do here is pick the override audit, edit override exec.py, and we can see it has opened the file for me, and this is my default. This is my overridden file of this. As a matter of fact, let's do it on this one instead, because this one's a smaller file. So we can see there are those lines that I added, and here's somewhere down here I'm using show quick panel on line 77 instead of show pop-up menu. So it's allowing me to actually edit this file. And what I can do is, there's a command in the command palette, as we can see here, diff single override or swap diff edit view. So this is a edit view on an override. As we can see, there's a key binding Alt O because I'm on Linux. Windows has the same key. Mac OS has a different key. Its key binding will show there. If you're familiar with Sublime, you know this is the key for swapping between a related file, like between a C file and its header file. That's a built-in thing in Sublime. In Override Audit, there is a specific defined for plugin files of type Python that are overrides. It knows that this is an override based on its file path, and it overrides that. So I can hit this key and see this diff pop up here in Sublime, and as we can see, it is literally like the output of a context, or sort of a unified diff with some lines of context which are configurable in Override Audit to tell me. Sometimes this is handy, like right here, and is all you need. Well, it's probably always handy, but I may have misspoke there. It's very easy to look at this diff and say, oh yeah, well, I added those lines, and then I swapped that line for that line. So if you just want to overview things, it's not too bad. Now I guess I should also say, if I'm over here in this file, I can use that same key to swap back to this, and I can use it to come back over here. And in addition to that, this is actually smart, so I can say, dang this coughing. Use the first 3 lines and save. We can see it reloaded the plugin. If I hit the key to swap to the diff, it has updated the diff. So you can use this to go back and forth and update things, which is nice. But there are some issues with this in some cases. Now, I say issues in double quotes here. And what we're going to do is actually say override report. This just gives you a list of every package that has an override in it, and for each what the overrides are. And in this, the S means the file was shipped, and I in that column means it's installed as a Sublime package file, and a U means it's in the user package. You're generally going to see something like SU or IU. It's actually possible to see S or SI or SIU, i.e. all 3 of them. Most people don't know this, but for packages that ship with Sublime, if you take an identically named file, like say for example python.sublimepackage, and put it in that installed packages folder I showed you earlier, then as Sublime is loading packages, it's going to say, well, there's one in the shipped packages folder, which is alongside the binary, but there's also one in the override or in the installed packages. I'm going to ignore my shipped package and entirely base the Python package on the one in the shipped package. That's known as a complete override. There's a little bit of support for that in Override Audit. It actually displays some text right here. And as a matter of fact, maybe we could just go ahead and show that right now because I don't really have a lot of content planned. So if I cd to local Sublime Text 3, which is where I have my copy of Sublime Text installed, or 80 of them, because I may or may not be a data hoarder. And I look in this thing, we can see there's the Sublime Text executable, the two plugins that provide the support for the Sublime API in its plugin environment, its copy of the Python 3.3 runtime, the plugin host. There's a folder called packages. And if I cd into that directory, there are a bunch of files here that are Sublime package files. These are the files that are shipped with Sublime here in this packages folder adjacent to the binary in the install folder. The same is true of whatever operating system you have Sublime stored on. So if I was, for example, to copy, we got to pick one of these. Well, let's go ahead and do that Python one. If I copy this Python Sublime package file from here to the config Sublime Text 3 installed packages folder, which is my user folder for this. Again, this folder changes location depending on what operating system you're on, or if the case of Windows, if you're using a portable install, it'll be different. You can always find it by using Preferences, Browse Packages in the menu to find this folder, and then you can just go up one level in this tree to here. So I'm going to copy that to here. And see, now it's unhappy because I swapped that while it was running. So I'm going to quit that and restart it. It's generally not a particularly good idea to do that. No, I still have my remote build system prototype in here. Note also, when Override Audit starts, it does a check to see if the build number of Sublime is different than it was the last time. And if it is, it'll check all of your packages to see if they have any expired overrides. It does the same check on packages when they're updated. Like say, for example, if package resource viewer was updated. So if I was to come over here to this package report and find Python in the list, we can see it's listed as a shipped file and an unpacked file because this is from before I restarted Sublime. So I'm going to right click and this file manager package really gets on my nerves with its crashiness. But in any case, I'm going to right click on this and pick refresh package report. Now we see it's updated to nowish, and if I go back to Python, it's listed as shipped and installed. And again, if I did that over here and did a refresh override report, now there's an I in that column, and this is a complete override. That means whatever is in the Python package that's in that shipped folder doesn't matter. It's using the one in the installed package, and then the uninstalled files apply to that instead. I'm going to go ahead and case issues. I'm going to do that. Yeah, make it unhappy again. But we'll go ahead and just quit and restart that bad boy. And I'm going to use the shortcut key to refresh that and refresh that. So that should go back to the way it was. Yep, okay. I did not. That one caught me by surprise. I apologize for that. If I was to, let's see, which one of these is the one most likely to, let's pick this one. I'm going to diff this override. Now, this is not the most helpful of diffs in this case. Because if we look, key name, string miscellaneous, key name, string miscellaneous, key scope, key scope. These seem to be more or less identical. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. So all of these lines are being treated as different, even though some of them are different because there's a decrease indent and an increase indent there. But here, there's more stuff in those than there was before. I think it visually looks like I have more. I can't remember why I did that. If I was testing a change from a that was unreleased, or I was showing someone something in a uh, Stack Overflow answer. But in any case, it's really hard to see what's actually different here. And I experimented for a while with being able to make diffs here not ignore white space differences for certain types of files. You don't want to do that for Python files because indent is important. But in this case, if it could ignore that, yeah, this used to be 3 and now it's 4. If it could ignore that, then it would look a little better diff-wise. This is using the diff functionality that's built directly into Python, I should say. That one wasn't a cough. That was just me drinking some of my mocha flavored coffee. And my voice is still sort of crickle crackling over here. um, but that functionality is very hard to get in there, if possible at all. I believe, if I was to give a rough estimate, I found 90 people online wanting to know how to do that. And I found 90 people being told you can't. Or if you wanted to re-implement from scratch the unified diff support to try and figure that out, you sorta could, because there's a functionality in the difflib that tries to say this file only exists in one, only exists in the other. Sorry, this line only exists in one, only exists in the other, exists in both, and try to figure out if stuff is the same or not by trimming white space off the front seemed particularly tricky. I decided it would be nice to do that, but what would be nicer would be if we could actually open an external diff for a tool or in our own tool, because then it not only would it open side by side, say, but that diff tool could also have the ability to cross merge stuff over. And that takes us all the way back to this external override audit external diff command, whose whole point is to attempt to create. Do I have more than one of these? Oh, that's just the thread. Okay. Um, excuse me. To try and run an external command to do that diff, and that would be here. So just as a test, and full disclosure, it's been a while since I've done anything with this. If I did window.run command, and the command to run was override audit external diff, and I passed it the argument of package, it prompts, doesn't it? Oh, sorry, yeah. It tries to, yeah, but we won't do it that way. We will in a second. The package is the HTML package, and the override is hard to spell. misc ellaneous.tm preferences. What does this do? Let's find out. I'm going to open the console over there in the other desktop so that when this fails, I can see it happening. Oh, look at that. It just kind of worked. I might actually find that this is even wider. This is a tab over here, and this it is not. So it's interesting that that gets portrayed that way, but nevertheless, it's a little easier to sort of see what was happening here. This is potentially not that great of an example of this if the reason for it is that that's using tabs and this is not due to my settings. I can see why the diff, it has to do something. It apparently it uses a default tab size of 3, which is weird. Let's go ahead and investigate that. This is a very free form thing. Actually, before we do that, just to point out, the way this is currently set up, you run the thing. If you if the package isn't none and the override isn't none, then it creates a package info for that particular package, which isn't the best way to do that. This class is something from my override audit package, which, given a package name, scans all 3 of the package folders to find out information on what package files exist, the Sublime package files, all of the overrides, figures all that stuff out for you. And if there isn't one provided, then it calls self.execute diff, which does the package resource browser for overrides. So I could actually test that here by removing this. This is other functionality that I have been working on. If I did this, oh, that's right. Oh, yeah, I did some changes here. Oh wait, user, no, type, go away. User OA. Test browse. Did I change it to? Yeah, it should be that. This is code we're going to see happen in just a second. Fingers crossed. Now what? Are you sure? Oh, I gotta reload this after I reloaded that. Maybe that is a problem. Nope, sorry. Override. Are you sure it doesn't? You know, this is something that I was. Let's go ahead and just push that key and make myself quite unhappy. How about if I do this? No. Package, resource. See, again, it has been a while since I used this functionality. Could also be a problem here because some of these files might try to be using the layout of the override audit package as version 1.1.1, which is the current released version, and I have a pending 2.0 version that I've had for a while now but haven't released, that completely uses the same, it does the same stuff, but the code is being massively reorganized. Type object package resource browser has, oh, they are no longer. Maybe that's the problem. It should be, yeah. Maybe that's the problem. Are you sure? Oh, is it not? Maybe we should do that too, huh? Apparently, I have massively changed this code without keeping this one up to date. But that's okay because that's less interesting. Again, we can totally do that and see the output that we desire. Just to show you what this does, if this is something where I would, whoops, that's not the one. I want key bindings, excuse me. If you've followed me for a while, you know that I like to have a key built. Oh, that one can actually go away. That was something I was helping Remy with in the Discord. Go like so. If I run the command, okay, there we go. So what are we actually seeing here when I do that? I provided no argument, which means file type is all. So I'm going to keep the console open, and I will actually clear it just so we can see things a little easier. I run the command. It's showing me a list of every package that is known to the whole of Sublime. If I pick a package, now it's showing me contents of things. Now I could go back up to the list of packages if I wanted. I can go to a different package, go to a folder in a package, go back out, and I can actually pick any file I want. And now it's saying that I selected add line in braces.sublime macro from default, right? Now, honestly, I was not expecting this much tickle. I've been feeling sort of okay today. I wasn't having these same throat tickles I've been having, but apparently that is not the case. Now, the default here is to use all. So I'm going to go ahead and key bindings that up again. I'm going to move this just to this other desktop because you don't need to see me fiddling with this, but I'm going to add an argument to this command. And the argument I'm going to add is file type. And the value I'm going to provide is overrides. Okay? So now I'm passing this as an argument, presumably. I'm going to hit the key. The same command runs, but now only, if I do that, the only packages that appear here are ones whose names appear in the override report. And if I look inside a package, like package resource sphere, which I did a second ago, the only files you can see in here are files that are overrides, default.sublime commands in this particular case. And I could even show you why I did that. I do not like extract all packages, and I do not like extract package. So I removed that one and changed this to extract package no thank you, so that if I do it, it goes away. Because I wanted to keep the command palette item in the command palette in case I was creating a video, but I don't want to accidentally extract a package because it's a pain in the butt, even though this tool will totally tell you about it. But in any case, now this allows us to prompt for an override because it only shows you packages that have overrides and it only shows you files that are overrides. And if I come over to this window and type the word non in front of overrides, now when I do it again, we can see I have all of the packages here again. And I'm going to pick, say, default. Here's the contents of the default package. And if I was to type ex ec dot pi, this does not appear in the list. And why? Because I told it to show me non-overrides. An exec is an override. So the whole idea of this functionality is to make commands basically to be able to better pick, because the current command for diff current, or if I do that, if I diff a single package, that does just show me a list of all packages in that particular case. And if I diff a single override, again, it's going to show me that. And I don't know if there's an example of Yeah, okay. I don't really have one here, but if there was multiple file folders here, instead of showing you that hierarchy tree, it just shows you the full name of the file. So I want to swap that and maybe make a command to create an override, since my other Windows laptop is out of disk space, because if you keep a program running too long on a system with only 32 gigs of storage, Windows gradually over time fills it up with garbage. Um, Never have Windows 10 running on anything with only 32 gigs of storage on a flash drive. That's what I say. In any case, I do have a lot of plans for override audit. We'll probably get to some of them in live streams. Some of them I won't. I want to come out with version 2. When I come out with version 2, it's going to be the version I'm running right now, the quote unquote BSR for Big Scary Refactor, which again is the same code, but the structure of the files has been modified. So instead of just being three monolithic files, there's file folders and everything looks nicer, which makes it big and scary. Um, but before I do that, I wanted to change the minimum version requirement of Sublime from what it is right now, which is build like 3126, I think, if I had to guess, because the only thing I really want to require is that you have a Sublime syntax support, so that I can create my own syntaxes for my reports and not have to create a TM language file, because TM language files are XML files and we don't play that. I do not want to touch XML if I can help it. Certainly not in the case of a syntax definition. Although the package dev got you covered there, I still don't want to do it. Um, so when version 2 comes out officially, it's gonna mark a point where you need to have a more recent version, and in that case, it's going to be maybe 3.1. I haven't decided yet. Something that has pop-up support built in, for sure, because right now the minimum version, if you go way back, you couldn't hover pop-up on things. Now you can. If I want to have pop-up support, I don't want to fiddle with whether or not I should actually be doing it. And as we know, I'll keep pushing that key. This version, man, that was neat. This version of Sublime, the more recent versions have this extra input directly in the command palette stuff, which was, we now know, secretly added to here, because around the time this was happening, they were working on Sublime Merge and creating this functionality for Merge, and because they share a code base, it was ported over to Sublime. I want to make use of this, but again, I only want to make use of this when I know it's definitely available, so I want to change the minimum version number. But before I do that, I'm going to push one or two last versions in the 1 point whatever series, just to add a couple of minimal features and bug fixes. And one of those is this external diff stuff from over here, which is the whole point of this. And I've just managed to sort of talk, cough, and stutter my way through 50 minutes or so of not actually coding anything. So par for the course there. You can expect that the override audit tutorial videos are going to be more succinct and broken up by topic, instead of being one long monolithic off the top of my head thing. Man, I got a lot of coughs tonight. This could seriously impact my ability to record videos, but we'll see what we can do. Um, so go away. Thank you. Okay, we're going to close all this stuff because for our purposes right now, well, I guess maybe if I could find a slightly better. There is something that I want to check here. Um, and go ahead and close that. Just create a tab over here. Um, if I do that, and okay, let's see. That's the console. That's the diff. That's my key bindings file, which I'm going to swap this key binding here um, to be this command, specifically this command with these arguments. So I'm going to copy those like so and come over here And oh, actually, I probably should have done that slightly differently, huh? These are the arguments I want, which replaces this thing. I guess I could sort of show you this over here. Those are the, yeah, we're going to play it that way, are we? Okay, let's do that. I like the way that looks anyway. Yeah, that's about what I figured. There we go. And this is the command, which I could type in there, but you know. There we go. Now if I come over here and hit the key, meld opens. Okay. Now, so we'll maybe change that as time goes on. That's good enough to get us started, so I can close that window now. And I've completely forgotten what it was I was going to. Oh, yeah, I remember. Oops. Python API docs for difflib. Thus, now if let's see, sequence matcher is the flexible class that gives you a list of stuff like that for you to try to do something with. But I believe what I'm actually using here is unified diff. Compare A and B, return generator, compact. Okay. Yeah, okay. So I was just sort of curious why here, if I look 1, 2, 3 characters there before that, but in mine, oh wait, sorry, that's not the file. That's all funky. This one is the file that's all funky. Here, 1, 2, 3 characters before the margin, telling me that's deleted, and here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I happen to know if I was to open, whoops, open the file that I am using spaces for my indentation. And if I run the meld command, we can see this as one character thinks it's a tab. Over here, it thinks it's 4 spaces. Oops, pushed a key. So if the shipped file has a tab there, which this thing is thinking is 8, and I don't want to start a holy war, but I also do not really care for that per se. See, this part of the diff is sort of looking like it's trying to tell me something useful, but not really because there's so much junk here. The question becomes, why does, if it has a tab, why does difflib think there's 3 characters there? Because this doesn't take A, B from file to file. I wonder how I'm loading that particular file. I mean, I would have imagined since part of this external diff command here is creating a temporary file and writing each line out. And let's see, where did I? Where the hell did I even open this? Oh, it's right. It's opened here. I don't know if that opens it in binary mode. There's nothing here that seems to directly indicate that it has any way of expanding tabs. If we went way back up to sequence matcher, oh yeah, it doesn't really say. HTML diff, AB, line terminator is new line, I think. Yeah, they're all just sort of the same. So here we go. The sequence matcher takes two files and auto junk and tries to return that list of sequences. Nothing in here, I would imagine. These lines can be confusing if the sequences contain tab characters. You telling me, bro? HTML diff. It looks like the tab diff size for when it goes out. So that, oh shoot. I hit the key when I didn't mean to. If you're compiling, So let's try that tab size and make file, make table. A function that accepts a character and returns if the character is junk or false. Yeah, this really makes it look like if you added spaces and tabs to char junk, it might actually do what you want. But it turns out it has weird effects. I can't remember why exactly, but I remember wishing. Yeah. Returns true for ignorable characters. It's ignorable if it's a space or a tab. Otherwise, it's not ignorable, which is the default, I think. Yeah. So it's already in the list by defaulties or something. So it's kind of unclear why that is doing what it's doing. Um, just as a test, if I actually open this file, oops, wrong key, and picked that and did convert indentation to tabs. Now I got tabs in there and I saves and I come back over. Yeah, reload that. Now look how nice the diff is. So that's maybe one issue with this sort of thing. Now I can easily see. But again, this is the whole point of this particular ability to externally diff, because now I can see, I can delete this, I can copy that, I can, if I remembered how to work, this is a newer version of meld than I'm used to, I must admit. Let's do that. Oh, there we go. It used to be an arrow that went both ways and you could pick which one you want. Copy up. Now that line is above, for example. So this is the sort of functionality we're going for. And as a matter of fact, if I was to come back here and fix that setting back so as I don't go crazy and save and come back here and reload so it goes all broken again, I believe there's actually something in here. And again, this is a newer version than I am used to. Uh-oh. Excuse me. Leading white space. There. If I did that, then this would totally solve the problem for me without me having to fill the file, which is something I could easily do. And do that. Do both. Maybe. No, I guess not. But still, these are the sorts of things that we want to be able to do here nicely. And so in order to pull that off, this is coming up with, it takes the override name, which we know is basically HTML / miscellaneous.tm preference or miscellaneous.tm preferences in the HTML package. It splits the thing apart, figures out a temporary name for the file, creates a temporary file. We have the packed package contents, which actually needs to be part of the API in that particular class. This underscore indicates this is something that's meant to be used by the internal diff functionality, but we got bigger fish to fry on that one, and it makes a temporary file and writes stuff out, comes up with an override name, and then it can spawn the external diff thread telling it to run the command meld on this base file and that override file. We provide the appropriate base and overrides in there. No other arguments. Start the thread. And up here, maybe we can even see it's seeing it catching the diff thread terminating. You create the thread, it stores the information. When you launch the thread, which is, I believe what that's doing down there. Boop, boop, dot start, I should say. Start calls run, run calls self launch, waits for the process to finish, generates an error, and then prints to the console. And if that base file exists, and it makes it readable and writable, because up here when we created it, I'm sorry, down here when we created it, we made it readable only. Specifically so that you can't fiddle with the file, make it read only on the file system, if you will. I can really feel my voice starting to crap out here. You may have to call this video a little earlier than has been the norm, which is probably not that big a deal because I'm not sure anybody's watching because I never actually scheduled this thing because I wasn't sure. But we make the file when we create it read only on disk so that you can't modify it because someone might assume if they modify it that's going to do something and it's not. We're going to delete it. It's really taking it from out of a zip file anyway. So that's why that's happening. Now this code up here, external diff thread, again, I say when you initialize it, it stores the information. When it goes away, it prints something. That's just specifically so we can see in the console that it definitely gets cleaned up and we're not leaking threads. This calls start. When to start it, start calls run, run calls launch and waits for the process. And what does launch do? It comes up with the shell command to execute, says what it's running, which again we can see here. It's running meld on temp shipped HTML miscellaneous dot this thing to make it unique dot tm preferences. And the right hand side is the one from my home directory. I actually tested that this works on Windows. Interestingly enough, on that blue laptop behind me that just a moment ago told me that it's running dangerously low on disk space because I left Windows running and it decided it didn't need any hard drive space anymore. But in any case, if this code doesn't look particularly familiar to you, it might if I did view package file and said exec.py, because if you look in async process, startup info is none, and then maybe we want to create a start call with startup info, and maybe we want to, if the shell command is Windows and there's a shell command, then p open some stuff. That looks pretty familiar. We notice we always have a shell command, so we don't do that. But this code is essentially this kind of stripped down a little bit because we don't need this because we're never going to get a command array because we've decided we're only going to get a shell command. So that part still works the same. This captures standard output, standard error, and for some reason the signs of pipe to standard in. Over here, I've set those all to dev null because I don't care what your external program says. I'm not displaying anything in a panel. It sets up an environment. It always passes shell is true, which apparently it doesn't need to do on Mac OS or on Linux, according to that. And oh, look, that's okay. I totally have that. I think we can tell where I copied that from. I actually found a bug in the exec code I don't think I ever reported. Notice here, If a path has been given, it stores the current path from the environment and then sets in a new one by expanding variables in the path that was provided. And then at the end, if there was a path, it puts it back. Here in the exec call, it creates a wait, where's the path stuff? If there is a path, it stores the one and then expands a new one. Okay, that's good. That's what the other one's doing. Down here, if there is a path, puts it back. Okay, that's good. Um, it's possible for this code to raise an exception. Uh, for example, if subprocess.popen fails, and if that's the case, it doesn't continue down to here, it goes away. And then your path is left broken. I think that was the reason. I can't. Oh, maybe it was. In any case, while I was testing this, I totally broke my machine hardcore, and it turned out that that was the reason for that, because it's possible for this to do something in a way where it can't restore the path. Or alternatively, they might have fixed it since when I noticed this, because I did write this a long time ago. So I don't remember if I ever actually reported the thing. Now, I'm imagining that what we actually want to have in this command is um, something that's very similar to the arguments that exec would get, but passed here. Now, one problem, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but exec as a command takes various arguments: command, shell, command, file, regex, blah blah blah. You might recognize these as the arguments you can put in a Sublime build file because that's where they come from. And it catches path and shell as variables by capturing all the rest of the arguments in a keyword args dictionary. I'm not entirely sure why it does that as opposed to just having path and shell there per se. But what this means is you can essentially, and I think this is sort of an important thing in the general case, put anything in a Sublime build file that's not a recognized key is just passed to the build target as an argument, which is what you want when you're building a custom build, like say one that builds files remotely. Exec, on the other hand, although it accepts any arguments you want, you note that down here, when it actually comes time to run the command, it will call async process with various things and then all of the keyword args. And if we were to jump to here, this does not have a ** keyword args. It has just those. So that means ultimately any argument you pass to exec that exec doesn't recognize and do something with is passed to async process, which immediately rejects it. That's not particularly, I mean, for the purposes of exec, I think it makes sense. The error message you get is unfortunate because it requires you to know how Python works to know what it's even talking about. But in any case, we want our command to do that, but maybe in a nicer type way. Excuse me, I really got to. I'm not sure. Well, let's see. It says I have dropped 124 frames, which is 0.1%, but otherwise the stream health looks pretty good. My health may not be that good, but it's been about an hour. Lest I make my comeback just be me talking about stuff. Let's pretend It's just some actual coding. But let's pretend that this is sort of an introduction to stuff we're going to be working on in the next few live streams. My ultimate goal, setting aside trying to find the time and the voice to write and script my regular tutorial videos that I want to create in my package development series, which I do have some stuff written for that, but I've been holding off on recording it because constant pauses make editing a pain in the butt. I want to um, get a override audit pushed out to get the official version up to version 2. And to do that, I first want to add at a minimum external diff functionality to override audit version 1 before I quote unquote abandon it. And by that I mean I'm really abandoning people that for whatever reason want to run versions of Sublime Text that are a year or two back. Because as much as I empathize with people, is that what I said? I hope I didn't say emphasize. As much as I emphasize with people that sometimes have to run older versions of things, Lord knows for the longest time this machine right here was 32-bit, although I made sure it was 64-bit in preparation for being able to test Sublime Merge when it came out, because Sublime Merge is 64-bit only. It's really a maintenance nightmare to try and keep things running on for people that are that far back, especially in the case of this. Like for example, an override audit, if I go up here to preferences, package settings, override audit settings, we see the standard two-sided window. Now we see that because this version of Sublime knows how to do this inherently. Um, for versions of Sublime before this became a thing, instead of this, the menu for package settings would look more like this one: settings default and settings user, key bindings default and key bindings user, instead of having that nice thing there. So there's all sorts of weird stuff I'm doing to detect that, to fix it. If I want to use pop-ups, particularly in my reports, to give you better options than the context menu provides, or to provide tips for what a shipped package actually is or where it's stored or all that information. Some versions of Sublime have pop-up support, some don't. If I want to create commands that you can select arguments interactively in the command palette, like in HyperHelp, for example, if you remember those streams, some versions of Sublime have that, some versions don't. It becomes very quickly a nightmare to try and detect the version of Sublime and essentially have two versions of every feature, one for people that are older and one for people that are newer. And that just makes your code base really hard to maintain over time. So that's why my ultimate goal is to up the minimum version number of Sublime. I want to do that right at version 2, so that from version 2 onward, we're at a good minimum for a while. We'll see what, Sublime Text version 3.2 or 4 or whatever is down the line brings. And but I do want to push some features out to version 1 first, particular at external diff functionality and maybe a couple of other visual tweaks. And then if nobody complains that the external diff functionality is horribly stupid or breaks, that's when we would push out one last release with visual changes, or there's another couple of bug fixes that I'm not entirely sure that I discovered while I was doing my Big Scary Refactor that may have been the result of the Big Scary Refactor and the way the code changed, or it might have just been something that was broken all along. If I get those in place, then I can make that last release be the last one that's available for people with older builds, transition to the newer builds, and then we're ready to build more functionality as the year goes on. Add those pop-ups, add those other commands, finish HyperHelp and implement it in in override audit as well. Is it to provide some override audit help in addition to that menu and those videos that I'm creating to make the world a better place. But for right now, clearly there's a lot of stuff to do. So what I'm going to do is shoot that over to that window. Let's close that for now. Zip this back. And what I really want is functionality very similar to this, only instead of taking command base override, or maybe with command base override and all this other stuff, to do basically what exec is doing down here. You see, it takes quite a few arguments. Some of these we don't need. Let's say, do we necessarily need a working directory? I don't know what you'd set it to, but maybe. Maybe that's interesting. Pretty sure we don't need encoding because we're not generating any output. So thusly, we don't need false, and we don't need kill because this external diff tool assumes that when you execute a command to diff things externally, it's going to be a GUI, or you're going to provide it a command to open a new xterm and run the diff in there. Whatever that's doing, we're not generating any output in a console. Start another one if you want, but it should be something interactive. Otherwise, what's the point of doing an external diff? So you don't need to kill it. We definitely don't need to update phantoms. We don't care about word wrap or syntax. So that's why there's such a few amount of things here. But one thing this doesn't do is allow you to expand variables at all. And in particular, something that exec doesn't do, because Sublime does it for you, is what if you wanted, I personally use Sublime on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. If I was going to have external diffing, I'd want to have one configuration file that just worked for all platforms, which means there's going to be platform-specific keys in there. We want to handle that stuff as well. So let's do just a little bit of coding before I decide that this constant tickle in the back of my throat is because I'm talking so much is reached the point where I'm pretty sure I'm going to go insane. And then call it quits. But again, I don't want to do that for new plugin. So here we go. This is going to be a window command because build systems are window commands, which means it doesn't have an edit, and we might do that. I wish I hadn't pushed that, and change this to arg test command, let's say. And we'll call it arg test for OAXdiff. Just cuz. That seems like a name that I will probably remember. Okay. That seems to have worked. Oh, and I want to quickly change this to, well, we'll again do that and bring this one up. Arg test, quit. Works. Good, good. Okay. So what we're kind of envisioning here is that we're going to get some amount of keyword arguments. We don't care what they are. There are certain ones we definitely care about, and then there are other ones that we don't. So the first thing I'm thinking of here is to say sublime.platform and do that. It can be OS X, Linux, or Windows. So let's say OS X is equal to kwrgs.pop OS X. And we're assuming it's going to be a dictionary, so we'll do that. Just get an empty dictionary. And then we will also say Linux is equal to kwrgs pop Linux. a and Windows is equal to kwrgs.pop. And of course, is this the form that this code will actually take at the end? No, we're sort of trying to decide how we want to proceed here, if you will, by doing stuff. So what's the idea is that we're going to get an argument dictionary passed to us. And as a matter of fact, maybe I'll even go ahead and, well, maybe I won't do it that way because that window might accidentally close on me. I've had that happen before. VPF user Linux default key bindings. There we go. So there's that, just so we can, we'll throw in args, but we will maybe, yeah, do that. And we'll just leave that as is for now. I mean, well, maybe we won't because, yes, I am anal enough that that will bother me. So again, if I do that, still works. We might get some arguments in here. Like we might have shell command, and the command is meld left. Whoops. Can't remember how variables work in things. And like so. We might actually even print kwrgs here. Maybe we'll stir it up. I can't remember if that's necessary or not. So empty arguments, save that. Unempty arguments, that's good. Okay, so maybe we want to pass an overall shell command, right? And then maybe we want to say working dir for whatever reason is $file dir, but we will wrap that in those. And, oh yeah. Exec target options. Oh, sorry, I actually wanted variables. This is currently broken, as I think, because because I didn't do that, perhaps. Oh, that just seems should have worked. The path to folder of the active view. Say I wanted to do $file path. Yeah, we'll do that, but we'll also go back to where we were because we might want to look at that again. We're going to close that file for the time being because we don't care, and the override report and that, and maybe we'll leave that. Okay, so maybe we want a little bit of that action. Okay, and then we decide, well, you know what, on OS X, we have different options, and here maybe we have shell command is actually user local meld $left $right. You know, because on OS X that's going to be different. This is the key that would work on Linux. On a Mac OS, maybe we want to do that instead. And then maybe on, probably should have did this a different way now that I'm thinking about it. I probably need a comma there. Over here on Windows, maybe our shell command would actually be c:\program files /meld/bin/meld.exe $left $right. As a matter of fact, yeah, let's go ahead and just for testing purposes say this. For Linux, we can assume that it's in the path. In fact, let's go ahead and further assume that we have meld 3.6 or something. I don't actually know what version of meld I'm running, but let's imagine on this system. Oh, actually, you know what I could do? I could say home T Martin meld. Oh, shoot. I did not mean to do that. Let's copy. I just realized I cut that when I did not mean to. There we go. So here it's in user local bin, but on this machine I installed it in my home directory, and on Windows it's installed. Okay, so now if I was to run this again, I gotta get rid of that. And I do that. Now I see there's still a working dir and there's still a shell command. I should remove that one because we don't want that one. Working directory should always be the directory that the current file is in. For whatever reasons, we're going to see in a second why I did that. Now, that's the only key that's there. Why? Because all of the platform-specific keys were taken out. Now's the part where I go over here and go type for dict and dot extend. Nope. I think it's update. Update the dictionary with the key value pairs from other, overriding existing keys. Okay, I'm assuming that that's of arbitrary depth because I don't know. Can I move that over so that that doesn't happen? That's nicer for the time being. Now, here's where things get sort of unhappy. This is, yeah, I don't know. There's probably a better way to pull this off, as a matter of fact. If Sublime platform is equal to OSX, no, actually, well, let's try some stuff. The dictionary we got should be, what did I say? Updated. It should be updated with a dictionary. I'm gonna cancel that. That still seems to work. Okay, so what dictionary do we want to update this with? Well, we want to update it with. I had an idea for how to pull this off with a dictionary where the key is OSX and the value is kwrgs.pop, OSX and that, and a dictionary with the key of Linux and kwrgs.pop Linux with that. No, actually, we don't want to do that. We want to pop them up there, I think, is what we want to do. So that would be OSX, OSX. We don't need a call. I'll tell you in a second why I'm doing that, but I want to type it out first while I'm remembering. There's a Linux and there's a Windows. Nope. The idea being we take this dictionary and we index it with sublime.platform. And I think that means we see the shell command for HomeTMartin meld left right, which is what I would have expected because that's the one for Linux and that's the host I'm on. Oh, cough coming. Gravy. So generally the idea here is this can have, it doesn't have to have these keys, in which case you would just get the empty arguments if this didn't exist. But if it does exist, remove it from the args because you don't want to try to pass an argument of OSX to an external command unlike Linux. That's the actual dictionary would contain that key. That's not really what we want. So we want to take out all of them and store them in variables for that very reason. Because if we just did this and did it the way that I was originally thinking, where it calls kwrgs.pop, then say on Linux, it would take out the Linux and put it in there, and then if there was an OSX or a Windows key, it would still be there, which is maybe harmless, but kind of ugly. And we index it by that to get the appropriate platform, and we end up with args that do that. Now, what I also need to do is say variables is equal to sublime, oh, sorry, self.window.extract variables. And let's see if I remember that correctly. Returns a dictionary of strings populated with contextual keys, packages, platform, file, file path, file name, file base name, blah, blah, blah. This dict is suitable for passing to Sublime expand variable. So it's creating a dictionary and returning it. And it's in this window because, you know, folder, project, project path, those are all window specific things. Um, then we can say variables left is equal to, let's say, do I still have it in here from when I ran it? No, I totally cleared, didn't I? I'd have to go way back. It was running. So let's say the left file is this. And variable, oops, right is equal to the local version of the file, which is that. Let me paste it in. It's long, but that's okay. And then we say kwrgs is equal to window dot, sorry, sublime dot expand variables. And we'll go ahead and look at the help for that. And the expands, oh, that's right, we don't have to pass it. It doesn't, it does return a value. Expands any variables in the string value using the variables defined in the dictionary variables. Value may be a list or dict, in which case the structure will be recursively expanded. All right, so that is what I expected. So yeah, you pass, say, a string you want to expand a variable in. In our case, it's kwrgs. And then you pass the variables, which are all of the variables that are standard to Sublime plus our custom ones, and it returns a new whatever. So if you pass a string, it expands variables in the string, returns a string. If you pass a dictionary, it expands all the keys in the dictionary, returns a new dictionary with expanded stuff. If you pass it a list, it expands the list, returns a new list, so on. So if I do that, and we got to come all the way back down in here so we can see it. When I run the command, now we can see the working directory is nothing. Well, that might be suspicious. But the left and the right totally seem to do something. Let's go ahead and print a variables here. Make sure I did that right. Do file base name, file path. Oh, did I spell it wrong over here? Yeah, I did. I did. I'm a dupe. I looked right at it in that build too. Anyway, maybe we should clear that again so that we can see it better. Oh, well, maybe we should take that print statement out because we don't care, and then clear the console, and then run that command. Now the working dir is my user package because that's where this is. The shell command has the file names expanded out in it. And as a matter of fact, I might want to be smarter about that and say that here and 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 here. Ah, I hate when I do that. Eh? Nope. Eh? Dang it. Well, maybe we'll have to self-fix that one. I think my mouse map might be mixed up right now because I was helping someone with something. We probably want that, but we want the $sign to be inside. What does that do? Now the file name is wrapped with double quotes, as one might hope. Okay. Maybe even on Windows, not that it necessarily matters here, because this is just the proof of concept stuff. But this is sort of what I had envisioned, and this particular stuff would appear in here. This would actually be shell command instead of command, let's say. Base and override are better than left and right here. You could also expand the current file if you wanted. So if for some reason you wanted to diff the base version of an override with the current file, you could do that if you wanted. But that sort of covers most of what we want for that realistically. And I think my throat's really starting to bother me after an hour and a half of nonstop talking. So I'm going to go ahead and mute this and drink some water so I don't cough too much. I lie. I actually coughed there while I was drinking water. So this is the general code that we actually want to have happen here. We're going to have our external diff command. So most of what we want is already done. It can run the external command. We have this little bit to do that stuff that I was pretty sure would be fairly simple. I think this is the last of the stuff. We need to implement a setting that contains this. And then the tricky part is the ability to actually add the command. Um, you can see there are multiple commands here in the context menu. They're sensitive. They hide themselves when they're not needed. That's why you don't see them here, even though this is also in my package folder. Um, and unfortunately, one of the things that I did in Override Audit version 1 that I was unhappy with after it was pushed out is that all of these context things, this is actually one command which takes an argument that tells it what to do, which was nice for a while, but the code is now so complicated. It's very tricky to pull that off. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to do the BSR. So I have to decide how I want to implement this. Do we want there to be a diff this override and to diff this override externally? Do we want to only ever have diffs be external? Do we maybe want to have a menu entry that only appears in a diff that says override audit open diff externally, but only when that command is set? Should it be in the command palette only? Should it perhaps be here override audit diff single override externally and nowhere else so that you have to use this? I don't know what the best user interface is there. I kind of have a feeling that I sort of know what it is, and it's the one that makes me sad because the code is more of a pain to write for version 1, which isn't something that I wanted to do, and I severely modified how that code works in version 2, which is the version I'm running here. The plus side of that is I've also been pondering the notion of making there be one override audit menu, like one Sublime merge menu here, and then have all of the commands in it. Although, as we can see, when none apply, you just end up with an empty menu. And I don't like that. It portrays better now that Sublime is using GTK3 than it used to, because I used to just have a tiny little white circle or white square right there. There's no way, as far as I know, to hide or disable a top level menu item if the menu it contains is going to be empty. It'd be nice if that was a feature. But that is a topic for another day. I ended up talking a little bit more than I wanted to. I'm going to go ahead and say if you watch this, I don't know why. Kind of off my game here a little bit, but thank you for watching. And yes, videos are coming to the main channel, and I will see how this week goes. I'm gonna say probably going back to Sunday live streams at the standard 8 p.m. time. Maybe not as long as I used to, depending on how my throat feels. Or on the other hand, maybe I got to power through this and build up some sort of tolerance for talking nonstop instead of typing nonstop. But videos, they are coming slowly but surely. I'm just, this sickness, this cold I had, or flu, or whatever it was, really threw a gigantic monkey wrench into my plans, which I did not like. But thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe to this channel or my other channel that doesn't have live streams. It has more edited, focused videos. Links to those are in the description. Please thumbs up any videos that you find useful or helpful or funny, or if they helped you fall asleep on the couch. Anything like that helps me know that I'm doing the stuff that I want to do. And until uh, until next week or next video, please remember to stay sublime. And if you watch my devlogs, yes, I did just salute, even though you can't see me on the camera. I am a doofus.